Good morning. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your Consciousness Transformation Ascension Guide and the originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. So we're going to talk this week about, we're going to continue talking about this fear thing. Last week we talked about fear and how to shift beyond living from fear. Well, this is a really big topic that's going on right now, especially because I'm pulling up my phone so that I can see comments, since that didn't work last week. Anyway, so let's just talk about the white elephant in the room, shall we? There is so much going on with this whole coronavirus thing, right? It's crazy. And if you step back for a minute and look at the bigger picture, you think, wow, why is everybody getting so crazy about this? It's very overreactive. It's very overblown for what it is. It's a flu. Okay. And yeah, you can talk about, people can die from it, whatever. People can die from the flu too. They do all the time. People can also die from have a higher chance of dying from heart disease every day, or a car accident or whatever. Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. Actually, it is, but it's not. Because I've been looking at this. I've been looking at the whole wave of panic that's going through the population. And so it's very, so you got to think about it. Well, we have a flu epidemic every year, pretty much, right? This is not particularly, it's not particularly bad. It just is what it is, right? And so why is it that we have things shutting down? People schools are stopping their intramural activities. People are stopping on their, they're buying, why are people going crazy buying toilet paper? I understand the stores are out of them. We're losing people are was it sanitizer and all that kind of stuff, going nuts. Here's the thing, right? And I laugh about it because I say, well, okay, so wash your hands, right? That's the essential basics of wash your hands really well, good hygiene, all that kind of stuff. But this is, like I said, this is not what we're here to talk about, because there's a bajillion things out there that's talking about it today. What is so important to look at is this. Why are we overreacting? Why is there such a huge panic going on? And you can say it's the media. You could say it's, whatever, right? But essentially, so many people I know that this is really a flu, right? And yet so few actually are really saying, okay, no, I'm going to step beyond this. I'm going to not be limited by it. I'm not going to live in fear. I'm not going to I'm not going to be limited by this, right? But that's the thing. So in energy work and in psychic work, we look at the bigger picture. We look at the wave, okay? Instead of the actual tactical thing that we're putting our energy on, it's more important to look at, why do we have this collective energy underneath, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on about, so why would we be over? So what is the agitation that's underneath the surface? Because if you do look at the bigger picture, you think, why would we be in such tremendous fear of a flu when we have a flu? We have a flu season every year, right? We've had Ebola, we've had MRSA, crazy stuff, right? We've had all kinds of stuff like that. And yet I never can remember them doing things like this, like canceling school activities, telling people at work not to fly anywhere, canceling, conferences and things like that. So you're going, why are we holding on to this energy of panic right now? So what's going on energetically that's causing us to panic and looking for something to use as a target. That is really the issue, because it's like, well, where, like, so, like, it could be the coronavirus, it could be, I don't know, terrorism, it could be shootings, it could be all that kind of stuff. And so we've had all of this. Why the overreaction? So in tuning in from the intuitive side, there's been a lot of huge shifts going on, and I'm still not clear. Like, so I can talk about this today, but it's still, it's not completely clear yet. It's just, we are going through some huge shift. Something is coming up from the depths that is making us very afraid. It's making us want to batten down the hatches. It's making us want to, like, lock all the doors and stay home and hoard our toilet paper and our sanitizer, right? And we want to hide from whatever that is. So that's why, if you go back to what we were talking about last week, we were talking about getting beyond living in a state of fear. When we stop getting reactive to a place of fear, then we can step back and say, you know, what is it that I'm actually, what is it I'm actually afraid of? Like, what is the, and you can say, oh, getting sick. That's not it. It's not it. That's what we point it to. So let me explain that to you. And a lot of times when something really deep comes up, and this is my experience, when something really deep comes up, I can feel it start to rumble, right? And that's when I'll find myself agitated, and I'll find myself sometimes, and being really conscious of this and in constant practice of this, I'm looking around at what I'm getting agitated at, right? And instead of shooting what I call shooting the energetic arrow externally to me, I look inside and say, okay, so what is this about? Sometimes it's a day where I am agitated at, like, almost every conversation I have, right? So I'm like, okay, so is there a pattern to that? What's reflecting back to me? But let me step back and take a breath and say, so what is it that I'm truly agitated about? And usually it has very little, if anything, to do with the people or the situations that I'm actually agitated with. Okay. So that's what I'm looking at collectively. We have something huge that's come up and it's agitating us. Now, here's the funny thing. I myself am having a completely different experience with the energy of this. And you can call it, agitation. When we feel uncomfortable with something, we tend to get agitated because there's a little speck of fear from the ego, because the ego says, well, what is this? Oh, well, wait, this doesn't feel good, or this feels uncomfortable. So what am I going to do with this? And then that's when we start to shoot energetic arrows at others and situations and coronavirus and whatever. So with me, because I've been so conscious about it, when I get that it comes up, it's a very different energy. It's like almost like I'm going to explode. It's not like energetically. It's almost like I'm going to just go poof. And it's similar to what people have experienced with Kundalini openings, right? And I had that a long time ago. But it's like even on a much different, much more powerful scale, which people say, oh my God, I can't even imagine. It's like, but when your body just shifts energetically like this, I had a session yesterday with a client who, it was interesting. We went in with one intention of creation. And when we were there, she started to rebuild herself and rewire herself. And it was really an intense session. And I was just holding the energy to help her do that. And so we came out of the energy session, and she looked at me and she goes, I feel exhausted. What did we do out there? And I was like, well, we did a lot, right? But what's happening is we are upgrading, right? We're upgrading ourselves vibrationally. We are shifting, and these shifts are bigger, I think, than we've had before at one time. And I know a lot of people say, well, how can that be? Because we've had some huge shifts. This is incredibly huge, and we're taking leaps and bounds now. So we're sort of jumping into, and I'm looking out the window behind me, but because there's sort of fog out there this morning, we're jumping off the cliff into the fog, not knowing what's down below. And so there's some fear, right? So we keep going, well, how could there be fear we've done this a bajillion times, we've taken baby steps, we've gotten bigger and whatever. And it's like, well, because it's almost like we're being put to task in a place from our higher selves, from the collective self, from the collective consciousness and the higher consciousness, to really step into what I call our symphonic note, right? So it can actually be orgasmic, right? It's all how you perceive the vibration and allow yourself to perceive the vibration. So it can be fierce. It can be fear. I don't want to say fear. Yeah, fearsome. It can be fearsome because the ego goes, what is this? Or you could say, okay, if I open my heart and I allow all of this to flow through, right? I'm going to allow myself to let it flow through in a way that is productive and expansive, right? We can shift the way the energy flows. We can shift the way we point our energy. And then it can be a much easier, productive kind of thing. Well, and there are some days, honestly, it gets so high that like I said, I feel like my body's just going to go poof, right? And I know that's big, huge adjustments at the DNA level and also other kind of stuff. And this is what, it's not just me, it's all of us. We're all going through this, and we're all going through this at different levels and different places, depending on where we are in our journeys. But collectively, we are all going through a huge jump right now, as my understanding. And so we can shut down, right? Because we're afraid of what this is. It's like almost like a completely new feeling. So it's like, oh, no, we need to shut down, and we need to grasp on to what we're familiar with because it makes us comfortable. Now, people might say, oh my gosh, how could like a flu be something that makes us comfortable? Well, it's something that we know, right? We know how to panic and fear about things that we believe could potentially harm us. We know how to be in a place of victimhood, right? So if you want to talk about a series of victimhood podcasts, my friend Sarah Evagnoni and I have been doing our Monday podcasts on Ascended World about victimhood in different areas over the past several weeks. Really powerful discussions and energy shares in there. But it's getting ourselves, so we're so embroiled in the victimhood game, right, for so long in this presentation of the 3D and our embodiment that we're sort of shaking ourselves out of it. It's almost like we're shaking it out of ourselves with the vibrational shift, and that makes the ego very uncomfortable because the ego says, well, who am I going to be if I don't do this, right? So Sarah and I talked about in our podcast, our Ascended World podcast, we talked about, oh my goodness, I just lost that whole train of thought because I'm just sort of like way out there. Oh, it'll come back to me. But the victimhood, as we shake it out of our identity, the ego says, well, what do I do? Oh, yeah, I remember it. Yeah. What do we do if we lose our humanity? Because we put so much of a stake in the ego of being human. We say, okay, and what does human mean? Human means what we define as human, right, is having, emotion and being emotional and, having the epic journey and all that kind of stuff. Well, all of that actually comes from separation-based energies and emotion, which is all ego-based, right? And when we come from a place of love and enlightenment and what I call remembrance and realization, we lose that need to have sickness, and we lose the need to have suffering. We lose the need to be limited and to live in lack. And people might laugh and say, well, what do you mean the need to? Because I don't need to live in lack and be limited, but many, 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 many do. It's not, I don't say this with judgment. This is just our condition and what we have defined as the human, as being human, right? And we think there's something very sexy about that, something very to put up on the pedestal and saying, oh, well, look at this, because we're very proud of the creation that we've made on these dimensions of the earth and this experience. So, but the thing is, it's just a piece of the wholeness. And yes, it's part of when we've gone into such density and forgetfulness, like we do in this part of our consciousness that's in our bodies. And we've increased that over the eons because it's what we wanted to experience. So then we forget and we believe we're in lack. Then we have somehow equated it in definition to being human. And so the thing that Sarah and I were talking about, and Sarah said this really well in our podcast, was that we've been looking at this little tiny voice in the back of our heads that says, I am a fake. I'm an imposter, right? The imposter syndrome, we call it. And in coming into our own intuition and remembrance and seeing things from higher perspective, we go through these things called having the imposter syndrome, where we feel like we're faking it. We're not, like that we're pretending we're something we're not, and all that kind of stuff. Well, then there's a point where it shifts and you get to this place where you realize, and what Sarah said is feeling like we are an imposter being human. Now that's a big shift, because we realize that we are not just human, and we know we're not just human. We know it even if we don't remember it. We are the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, we are the Lyrans and the Andromedans, and we are the reptilians. We are the demons as well as the angels. We're all of that. That's all part of this consciousness. That's a discussion for another day. But we have so what's the word I'm looking for? Exalted the idea of being human, that we think it's better to be limited and to suffer and to push through and all that kind of stuff. And then we talk about these things. So then when we remember this and our consciousness is like, oh yeah, this is like a little tiny speck of who you are. Then in our minds, the ego goes, oh, then I'm an imposter. There's a completely different perspective of the imposter syndrome, right? And it's like, oh, well, now I'm pretending to be human, and oh, nobody's going to find, like, what if they find out I'm not human? What if people find out that I'm more than this, right? And then there's a fear about that, about getting, exiled and, punished and all that kind of stuff, breaking the rules. So there's a lot of levels to these stories, but what's happening right now, so to go back to the original discussion, what's happening right now is, with these big shifts that are in the undercurrents of our collective, we are bringing back to the surface that remembrance collectively that we are not just human, that humanity is a much different perspective thing than what we have exalted it to be. And so there's a lot of friction, and there's a fear about that, because we don't want to, we have become attached emotionally to it, right? The ego has become attached to it because it's been the ego's domain, right? The ego's exploration of separation and identity and lack and all those kind of energies and emotions of fear and anger and anxiety and guilt and doubt and sorrow, pain. And we just have really reveled in it. So when the energy is coming up and we can feel the ground rumbling, right? And I say that because I've literally felt the ground rumbling for several years, as many who I know in a conscious state have felt as well. There's so much changing for us to really allow ourselves to step into who we are, to step into what we remember, and be human. So it changes the need for it changes the definition of what humanity is. Humanity is a very small part of our wholeness, but it is a very crucial part of the experiment, even if we don't have the conscious remembrance of that yet. And so with that rumbling, there's this fear of letting go of that, those definitions, and the ego's hold on it, right? Because it's been its domain, it's created it. So, so what, of course, if we are going through a collective shift, and it's almost like we've been going through a collective awakening, and many have talked about this for a long time. We've been going through a collective awakening that's started well more than a decade ago, and it has just done everything. It's just accelerated more and more and more as we go. And as we, it's like we hit this major point in December-ish to our calendar, where we're making this huge shift. And it's just, ever since then, it's like everything is sort of crumbling away, falling away. And things had been before, but this has accelerated it. And so, of course, there's a lot of unease. So collectively, there's panic going on. And the panic is coming to the surface. And because so many are still stuck in externalization and looking outside of them for the answers, that is why they're finding something like the coronavirus to look at and point to as their target, right? Because it's really a fairly minor thing in the scope of the bigger picture. And so for us to be actually shutting down so many things and, canceling school activities, like I was saying, and, canceling different school stuff and canceling trips and whatever is and it is a vast overreaction, right? And but B, it's just distracting us from looking inside to what's causing that irritation and panic to begin with. So as I talk about almost every week, so important to turn it all inside, to step back, to find your center, and to say, okay, so what is my reality here? What is my truth? Okay. Is this going to affect me? More times than not, a vast majority of times, I'm like, really, no, not really. It affects you now because everybody else is panicking, right? And the more we panic, the thing that happens is we get into that whole like sheep mindset. The more like a group panics, and it starts to snowball. So the thing to do is to step out of the snowball, to take a breath, to look inside, to find your calmness and center, and to ask your guidance, not the ego, because the ego is what's going to say, oh my God, we've got to get all this toilet paper. Oh my God, I've got to go out and get all this sanitizer. Oh my God, I can't go anyplace. Oh, I have to cancel all my trips. Oh, I have to just lock all the doors and stay home, which, by the way, is probably one of the worst things you can do, because it keeps you from like getting out into different mixes of energy and open air, right? As it's getting warmer now, it's great to go outside in the open air, and it really dilutes a lot of things too. So anyhow, the key is that the panic has nothing to do with the actual coronavirus. The panic has to do with what's inside with us. And so, and it's a challenging thing to really comprehend when we are not in the practice of stepping back and breathing and observing and looking inside. But the thing is to say, and instead of engaging in, like, we keep on, and I really hesitated to even have any conversation about this whatsoever, because there's just way too much going on out there. But my guidance was to talk about this. And so I am. And the key is, though, stepping back, taking that breath, finding your center. And if you're not meditating, please do find a way to help you meditate. And I've put the link in here before. I'll put it. I have a great, like, less than 10-minute meditation that helps you to just clear your mind, expand your energy, sit in a place of centeredness, and get to a better place than, like, where the mind is all chattery and stuff like that. That's all it really takes. You can just take 10 minutes, even if it's 3 times. I know people who do it like 3 times a day for like 10 or 15 minutes. Great. When you start to do that, you'll find that you make different decisions. You find that the decisions you made are not based on fear, not based on what everybody else is around you is screaming. Like, what's that? It's so funny. I said that the other day. It came out of my mouth. I'm like, it's like Henny Penny, and I'm like, oh, I haven't said that or even thought about that for ages. Right? The story Henny Penny. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. And so, what if the sky was falling? That's the question to ask. When we start looking at the multiverse through the eyes of energy, right? So I talk about it a lot through energy, but it's interrelated with source. It's interrelated with quantum physics, and I've been looking a lot at quantum physics and how it equals out to the stuff that I also see out there. But when we start looking at things that way, the emotion thing stops being in the equation, because the emotion stuff comes from the ego. And so, we look at all our, like, we have all these things, the Borg, assimilate or be destroyed or whatever it was, the Borg in Star Trek. And we have all kinds of things that it's like, oh, it's bad to be part of a collective. It's bad to not have, emotion or whatever. And it's like, but if we are, the more we're void of the egoic emotion, the more we're in a space of love. We're not in a space of nothingness. The more we're in the space of wholeness, and we have a lack of need to actually ooh, My phone just started vibrating. We have a lack of need to actually react, right? So that changes our entire perspective, the way that we act toward people and others. So look at that. And by the way, and also in the back of our minds, we have this equation. The ego says, if I feel this energy shift, it's something I don't know, and so I'm going to be scared of it. And so then that actually sort of builds on other fears. So we have this big, huge energy shift going on. And we have huge, bigger than it's ever been before. And so underneath that is the, oh my God, what is this? Oh, here's the tsunami, right? Oh, what can I point it to? What can I point it to? And it's like, okay, so tell the ego it's okay. Tell them it's nothing we don't already know at the collective and higher consciousness levels. And to take your step back, to find your center, to trust, to find your place of trust, to say, you know what? I accept and allow this. I open my heart every day, every moment. I open my heart and allow all possibility. To allow the best, the best is ego-based, to allow the realization of our intended evolution, creation, presentation at this moment in a way that's easy and fun and flowing and joyous for me, right? And so I do focus my energy all the time on keeping my heart open and allowing all possibility in those kind of respects, because that's when the vibration stops being fearful and starts being pleasurable and exciting. And then it's sort of another exercise to allow the body to embody, allow the physical body to embody the vibration, right? That's the shift up, the shift expansion, to allow the body to do that and hold it and in a way that's productive and easy instead of uncomfortable and fearful and painful, which can be painful. So, people, if you look up Kundalini openings, right, it's like I said, it's similar to that, but what it was 20 years ago is 10 years or even 5 years ago is nothing in comparison to what's going on today. So when you allow it, that's where, what comes up? Tantra comes up. Allowing those kind of energies to really flow through our body, our energy system, and to to really allow our bliss to be embodied. And some people call it sexual, right? But it's actually way beyond that. And, many can't even imagine that, but it's way beyond that in this place of bliss and harmony and remembering the divine that we are, and remembering that and bringing it into our embodiment, which is very different than what we've done for a very long time. So I will post that link there again today. This is a thing for us to be constantly conscious about. And again, I go back to always asking your guidance. Step back and ask, is this dangerous? Is not dangerous. Dangerous is an ego. See, but it's an ego term, because there is nothing that's dangerous, because there's nothing outside of us. It's all part of who we are. Even the coronavirus is me. Me expressed as the virus. And to say, okay, so what is the purpose for this? What is and okay, let me step back. What is the fear coming from? Right? Or just finding, I don't even like asking the question anymore, just coming to that place of allowing that centeredness, allowing the energy that's the undercurrent of that to come through, so that we can embody something that is a much higher vibration than fear. And when we do that, we will not ever get sick. It will not need to present itself in like a flu pandemic or anything like that. Then we can start to connect ourselves, allow ourselves the connection that we already have, like get rid of the partitions that make us forget that, to allow the higher vibration connection, because it is so much higher. And we go even faster in evolution the more we connect, not just within ourselves, but to everybody and everything around us as part of ourselves. So what happens with the flu thing, interestingly, that this would be presented this way, is that as the vibrations come in, I was like, okay, it's time for us to be us, to be me, to be one. And the ego goes, no. I need to find a way. Now I'm going to create a way that's going to force us to stay in this separation and this part of our consciousness. And to do that, well, what's one of the best things to do? Instill fear and make people want to be separate from each other. Oh, what's better than a virus or a flu? To do that, because then we're like, oh no, don't touch me, don't touch my hands, don't come in my contact, I got to wear a mask. You want to talk about putting all these levels of separation? The ego's like, no, 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 no. So here's the thing. It's time for us to supersede the ego. It's time for us to step beyond that and to say, okay, instead, I'm going to focus on my connection with everyone. Instead, I'm going to embrace that connection and wholeness and realize it's all me. And that this is a good thing and a huge part of our expansion and evolution. And the more we can center and step back and do that and get our guidance as to, okay, so what is there for me to do now? Now, what do I need to do? Because need is ego-based. What is there for me to do right now? And when that calm, clear voice comes without the buy toilet paper or whatever, when it comes, it's going to be very different than anything that has to do with a virus or anything external to you. So that's the practice for this week. Because if the more of us who do it, the faster we can get past this, the faster we can get through it and to get what's next. Because if we get lost in this panic of the ego trying to still grasp onto the separation and create even more so, like, and hold that space, the more we are going to create a bigger catastrophe, not catastrophe, a bigger catalytic event that will push us beyond that, whether we like it, whether the ego likes it or not. And I myself prefer to go freely and in a place of love and orgasmic bliss. I would rather orgasmic bliss than fear any day. So on that, please do your self-work and be very conscious and observant of what you are saying, what you're doing. Remember, this is all an illusion that we create, and that when we transcend the illusion of the separation and the fear and everything else, we see a very different picture. So on that, I'm going to let you go. We'll see you next week at this time. This is Angela Coulter signing off with this week's Living the Shift. Have a good one.